Welcome back. Welcome back to another live discussion of Real Talk. Co-host, how you been, man? Let's go.
Yeah,
we
let's
back,
go.
baby. We
Yeah,
back.
let's go. Let's
we
go.
back, man. We back.
I'm tired of these technical difficulties.
Man,
Let's just jump right in. We got time. We already wasted some time. Let's get going.
Wow, that's there. That's good. That's good. That's good, man. Perseverance. Perseverance is key. All right.
And time is key also.
Yeah. What is it? Cleanliness is no. That's timeliness or something. To godliness. And
No,
it's neither none of that.
Cheapers,
Yeah. See, so you don't need to worry about that.
What's
We
up,
here.
everybody. We here.
We talking about politics. It's a lot of things going on. I would do my news briefing, but we're a little too far behind. But stuff is crazy out here, Steve.
I know.
It's really crazy out here.
I know.
And I want to say something to you so bad that I'm not going to say, but I'm going to say it anyways. You voted for these people. You voted for these people in some of these situations, man. It's some craziness going on right now. Chaotic right now.
As I said before,
it's chaotic right now.
Also chaotic underneath another presidential regime.
It wasn't chaotic in last 4 years.
It was definitely chaotic.
We had no wars.
Wait a minute. Time out.
Well, okay, define your chaotic.
First of all, a war wasn't started by an election of an individual in the United States. That's been brewing for decades and centuries. So that has nothing to do with it. Number two, somebody can instigate it a little bit, poke the bear, but that hostility and animosity has been brewing from both sides of the courtroom, or both sides of the fence, or whatever you want to call it. When we had a Democrat in office, when we had a Republican in office, that beef going on over there in the Middle East has always been provoked and poked and abused and misused and taken advantage of for American interests or America financial interests. So I'm not blaming the individual for that.
No, I wouldn't. But he did campaign on that he could stop all these things from happening.
Come on. First of all, you already knew that certain people, everything in a campaign has to be weighed with reality. Okay. So we understood that if somebody were to say, I could stop all the wars in the world, come on, my guy, chill it out.
Not him, man. I believe him.
Stop it.
I believe him.
But at the same token, there are other things I very much appreciate that he has done and is doing. So there's bad and good with everybody. I can't really think of anything good on the Democratic side. But anyways.
I can't think of that good he did so far. You tell us there's a lot of good things he's done. I don't know what it is yet.
You can definitely name some things.
Tariffs.
You just don't want it.
Tariffs?
That didn't work.
Oh, he did do something, and then we're going to start. He went back and said that he's going to allow the immigrants that are farmers in a hotel where he's going to allow them to work.
Because he knows.
Mind you, after he done deported all these people, he now came back and said, I give him credit for
rhetoric,
for putting out the fire that he started.
Rhetoric helps win votes. We understand that. Any action that somebody does, we also know in that office and in those offices, they also know that let it brew for a while, then we can retract and we put things back on the rails. Everybody takes things off the rails just to satisfy their voters and then put things back on the rails so that the whole populace can be like, okay, now we're back to normal. But that man knows you get rid of immigrants, you have plummeted the economy because everything is going to skyrocket. And that's a reality. People may not like it, but it's a reality. You get rid of illegal immigrants, all of them. Number one, you're going to back up the due process system in America, and you'll never give everybody due process because it would be impossible for them to go through the proper channels, get legal papers. That would just bankrupt us just in labor to do that. Number two, if you were to get rid of illegal aliens and immigrants and send them back to Mexico or whatever, no, I'm going to tell you right now, none of you, what word am I looking for?
I don't know, but you might want to pause yourself because I'm gonna have to press pause on this because I don't know where you're going. I don't know what side is the black side. Are you about to say something? Because it didn't seem like it. It seemed like you was going because none of you are going to step up and do these jobs. Those ain't the black jobs.
You privileged people out there are not going to take on these field works, these field jobs that they're doing to bring in produce and harvest that you can enjoy fresh produce at a very reasonable rate. Because if you got rid of illegal aliens who are out in the fields actually getting that stuff, you get rid of all that and you put a labor out there, and then you put a union labor out there. Oh, produce is going to go through the roof.
Well, we've done enough of our work in the fields. That's why we're done.
We ain't going back out there regardless. We ain't going back out there in the fields. You know good and well we ain't going back out in the fields. Even if you was paid
as a luxury, yes, we would have grown our own food, but we're not doing it for nobody else telling us.
To my point, so we can get on to our main subject at hand.
Yes.
To my point, regardless of how people feel, whether if it was Obama, Biden, or Donald Trump in office, everybody has good and bad, and therefore I'm cool being able to talk through a political conversation and understanding there are wrongs that the Republican Party has done, there are wrongs that Trump has done, and there's wrongs that the Democratic Party has done, and there are wrongs that Obama has done and Biden has done, but that doesn't stop them from still being able to achieve other good things while in the presidency. And we have to be willing to let people commit to their 4-year presidency. The only time that you have to be worried is when everybody around you and everybody in the nation falls asleep and stops voting and stops having a conscience and just lets the government do whatever they want. Then you're in big trouble. Meaning that you just allow tyranny to exist. Glimpses of it seem to poke its head, but because we're conscious individuals that vote, or we're conscious individuals that voice our opinion or are having, our rallies or whatever, those tyrannies get squashed or regulated. That whatever law is trying to be passed, it's countered with, people recognizing that law wouldn't be good, and we get it back in order. So
I do agree with you that we should wait a 4-year term. Give that person 4 years to enact everything that's going on. Don't just measure them in the first quarter. Give them to the fourth quarter.
And the problem is that people vote with their feelings so bad, is that even after 4 years, because again, there were some good things that he did from 16 to 20, and there were some bad things that he did through 16 and 20. Did it outweigh what you saw being done between 20 and 24 with the Democratic presidency? And as far as what they were achieving, for you to decide to yourself, I'm going to go back to what this person promises that he's, what kind of history does he have? What kind of, results did he bring from 16 to 20? And then you measure that. Now, again, you're going to be able to measure now from 24 to 28, because you'll be able to see, is that person going to be able to follow through? Are they going to be able to sustain their rhetoric and be able to achieve goals? We already saw after his 150th day, he's backtracking. Now he's got to fall out with his main homeboy. Now we have to bring people back. Now we have to realize that the employment that he whacked is now having to come back.
A lot of damage is done though, because you're not getting those people.
But what I'm saying is, I get that. Therefore, I'm saying now you have something to measure people by.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And like you said, which now we are getting into this, we then can see, did you uphold the Constitution to the best by those who voted for you?
Right. Now, again, we're talking as Christians. So now we're going to have a dialogue about the amendments. We've been going through the amendments, but we're now talking, what about having a Christian mind while analyzing and looking at and considering what the political climate looks like, and how should I view these things with a biblical mind? What would the Bible say? Or how should I develop a worldview and maintain my worldview that is biblical, and be able to still, show support or show at least a sense of reasonableness to have conversations, or to engage in opinions, or engage in rallies, or whatever they may be, but to know why I'm doing it, why I'm there, why am I saying what I'm saying? Am I saying it from a biased opinion, or am I saying it through a thoughtful and logical, perspective, that I worked through the nuances of the situation that we're analyzing, and making myself open to questions and open to opinions and suggestions that helps me to rethink my angle, or rethink my thought process, or my opinion, that maybe I could better myself by listening to somebody else.
Agree.
So
that's life. You should always be at a point in your in your mind where you can be challenged, you can reconsider something.
So, all right, we have been dealing with the amendments.
Yes, we went through the first two, and now we're on number 3.
We
and
are
when
on
I
number-
got to number 3, I said, okay, let's go to number 4.
No, I love also not so much as number 3. Now, this is going to be one of the amendments.
Number 3 is bland, plain.
It's
It's
really
not bland. It's just
really not.
It just doesn't have any impact to us today
because it's never been used, or it's never been needed. There's no court case at the Supreme Court level. There's no Supreme Court, verdict, or it's never been challenged. The Third Amendment has never been challenged at the Supreme level. Yes, but I just want y'all to be aware. That's why he's saying, "Man, it's dull," because there's no fireworks off of this joint.
There's nothing.
Not like the First Amendment. The Second Amendment was fireworks. Like, you have Christians on both sides of the camp with the First Amendment, with the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
They're ready to go off. They're ready to stand their ground, 10 toes down, saying, "No, I'm this or I'm that."
Because there's more gray. There's more gray to say, like, wait a minute, da da da. This is really kind of.
But it's amazing. There's some facts behind how the Third Amendment came into fruition. So let me just read you what the Third Amendment is about. Okay, so it says this: the Third Amendment that's in our Constitution, within the Bill of Rights, it says, "No soldier shall, in time of peace, in any house with." Oh, I'm sorry. Oh shoot! I didn't write it down properly.
Oh, this man.
Basically, what it is, I know I messed up. I missed like a few words, but anyways, what it is no soldier shall, in time of peace, meaning in our country, occupy a house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Now, this Third Amendment comes from a law that was written in England in 1765 called the Courting Act. The Courting Act. Now, the Courting Act means, for instance, go to your quarters, or I reside in my quarters, or, when they use that word quarters for housing. The Third Amendment came from a law written by the king in England requiring the colonists that had been established in the Americas, in North America, right? Again, mind you, at that time, they had not received their independence. They were still, they were under the sovereignty of Britain.
Gotcha.
The early colonies were under the sovereignty of Britain, okay? Mm-hmm. So they were still subject to the laws of England.
Yes.
So now, what it was saying is, in England, the king made a law where soldiers under the Quartering Act, could reside in someone's home, and you have to house that person, help them, feed them, and so on. In the time of peace, during the time of peace, the only time you could do it during wars, there had to be certain laws that craft that ability. So it sounds pretty boring, right? Basically, it's saying is anybody in the U.S. Army, anybody in our armed services right now, legally cannot just come into our home and reside there and be expected for us to take care of them. That is against the law, okay? Because during the time of the 1700s, as this original law was written in England, the king wanted to, and here's the craftiness of laws. When laws are drafted, here's the craftiness. The law was enacted so that way the king could eavesdrop on, what do you call dissenters? People that deviate, like dissenters, dissenting?
I don't know.
Deserters. People who want to leave the rule of England, okay? And so you have soldiers.
They were using like a spy.
Eavesdrops, absolutely, to use as an opportunity for people that are in their homes who might be agitated with the rules of England over here in the new country, in the new world. The soldiers would be present to eavesdrop on what's going on. So what ended up happening is here's an awesome fun fact. So you remember when you were taught in social studies about the Boston Massacre? Mm-hmm. You remember the redcoats killed civilians? That stemmed from this law. they were getting agitated with the soldiers living and occupying their privacy. So it was a privacy thing that agitated the colonists. It agitated them that their privacy was being given up without their consent to soldiers. You get it?
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was they were becoming more and more agitated. That what happened was the king sent soldiers up to Boston to sequester a rebellion that kind of like what seemed to be brewing. So one day the redcoats, the soldiers, seemed to be like very provoked and nervous about their life, ended up killing civilians in Boston. That became the Boston Massacre. What follows is the Boston Tea Party, where they emptied all of the tea into the harbor, in the Boston Harbor, and provoked and started this process of the Revolutionary War. You get that?
I got that.
Here, what are you shaking your head for?
No, I'm following you.
Here's so when you think about the Third Amendment, me as a Christian, what am I saying now? How does it relate to us? What is it relevant to today, right?
Respect people's privacy.
Basically, it leads to other laws that force the sense of privacy, protecting your privacy as a legal citizen, making sure that your privacy, and there's other laws we'll read into later, that serve as a form of giving you the legal right to not have your privacy invaded.
And we would have to think that as these people are writing this, they've seen the damage and the harm done by, right? Like I have to look at this as a believer in my mind and say, the intent of this is that they've seen the harm, mm-hmm. the danger of it done. So pay attention to that. Have some sense to understand that we shouldn't have this thought of like, well, there should be some times where like you should understand that these founding fathers that wrote these things had this sense of understanding the damage and harm that was being done.
So as a Christian, I want you to think about some things as far as your being an advocate, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit about this for a second, then we're going to go into amendment number 4, because 3 doesn't have a lot of sparks, 4 has some sparks. It's going to get a little sparky again. But as a Christian, my ability to advocate. So here's the timeline. The timeline is this, right? 1865, the King of England makes this law called the quartering law, the quartering law. And that means, your quarters have to be opened regardless for soldiers. Cross the ocean, you come into America, and that law also is enacted, and the colonists are not appreciating this kind of invasion of privacy. Okay. Then what happens is 1770, you have the Boston Massacre. 1773, you have the Boston Tea Party. The Declaration of Independence isn't drafted until 1776. Mm-hmm. Okay. But it's ratified. Exactly. And it's ratified. And this is where Amendment 3 comes into play. It's not ratified until 1789. So from 65 to 89 is a span of 23 years. This is what I want to get at. Sometimes change takes time, but you have to be willing to advocate for that change. These colonists committed themselves to a cause. They committed themselves to a cause to say, nobody is going to infringe on our freedoms. This is why we escaped England. This is why we want to be separated from England, because the laws over there were tyranny. It was a king invading everything about our liberties. Okay. So you have them coming across to start in a new world, and yet these laws were still suppressing them or oppressing them, and therefore they started, fighting for their liberties. They have the Declaration of Independence, 1776. It's ratified. 1789, the Third Amendment is drafted, and it becomes law. They fought for their rights. They advocated for their rights. This is where you and I, as Christians, need to learn how to have some commitment, some determination for change. Just because change doesn't happen overnight, and just because there's a dogfight to see change, should not make you waver and thinking it's not God's will. Whatever is right and good and true for humanity, it's worth fighting for in the eyes of God. God has always respected and always required people to uphold that which is good, right, and true for humanity. Whether somebody believes in God or not, it's honorable in his sight because it does well for the whole being of society to uphold that which is good, right, and true. And I showed you the timeline just to be aware of. They fought for this independency, this fight for their privacy being protected, that nobody can come in and invade their privacy.
Yeah.
And so as a Christian, I need to be able to have that kind of mindset to advocate for that which is right, good, and true, and be willing to fight for it. I don't mean go out there and fist fight somebody. I mean have the commitment that results in like a fight, that there's a constant battle, a constant pushing, a constant determination to stand up for that which you know is right, keep both feet planted on the ground, and be unmoved until you see the results appear. So that's a part of, thinking about a Christian and politics in the sense of I'm not using politics to get my way. I know that politics have to be used in order to make change appear. I have to use the channels that are granted to develop a righteous form to bring laws into existence. Even though it's abused, it's corrupted. And I want to read some scripture to show you where things get corrupted. You'll see how people will abuse and misuse it. However, as a Christian, I need to use that process and have a commitment through that process to see change. So, sound good so far? We good?
Yeah, we good.
Any questions on this? I really enjoyed learning more and more. It just brought back, man, I was stupid in school. I was dumb. I was not paying attention. All this stuff was said, and I never put two and two together.
No, it's good that you're using past tense. That you was. I was paying attention to the past tense. You didn't use anything present. You said you was.
Okay, Fourth Amendment. Big amendment.
They're all important, Steve. Not one better than the other.
All right.
Well, depending upon who you ask.
Right. Exactly. In and of themselves, they're not greater, but how people's perceptions are and opinions are, they become better. Okay.
Let's get to this Fourth Amendment.
Fourth Amendment. Here's what it is. I'm going to read it. It is the right.
Well, I can't pat. I'm patting you down, man. I'm patting you down. I'm patting you down, man. I'm patting you down.
The right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Let me just stop here by saying, I think with the purest of hearts, this amendment is a great amendment. And by the purest of heart, I mean with no partiality, with seeing mankind to be equal across the board, whether male, female, no matter what your race, no matter what your religion, across the board,
religious orientation.
I have no problems with this amendment.
You should have no problem with any amendment.
Right. Well, yes, depending upon how it's written. A minute
ago, you just said they're all equal, so you should have no problem with any amendment.
Yeah, they're all equal to who wrote it, right? Like whoever wrote it, they feel as though the Constitution is all equal and it's great. On its face, love it. I just cringe when I hear the word unreasonable. What do they say? Unreasonable something and then probable cause.
No, it says against unreasonable search and seizure.
Yes, unreasonable search
should not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued.
And then later on it says, and you must have
upon probable cause. And I will read to you what probable cause is too.
You can read it to me, and you can read unreasonable.
And that's the thing. That's the problem. Probable cause during the engagement, during the moment, is subjective. It's subjective. And this is where the heat starts to build, is that it can be shown where there is disparity or hold on. Where am I at? Where's my notes at?
This guy.
Where there is disparities within communities. Okay. And there are huge disparities in certain communities when it comes to the idea of not having your not having illegal search and seizures. Okay. And so as a Christian, there's things that I need to be mindful of. First of all, I need to be mindful of what my rights are as a American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean, and just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you have extra rights. You just happen to be a Christian in America. So you are a US citizen. The United States amendments to the Constitution protects you with rights as a citizen of the United States. Okay. Now, regardless of what you believe in, regardless of your faith, what orientation is, no matter what, you're still protected by the government. The problem comes into how that government agency
who's enforcing
that's what I'm saying, the government agency, whether if it's police, whether if it's the courts, whether if it's the governors, whether if it's judges, no matter what, the governmental agency that's using that at that moment their authority, but they're using their authority in an abusive way or in a bad way, right? Mm-hmm. You have to understand what's going on, and you have to understand how you are protected by the United States Constitution. You have to know that. You have to understand that. So there are things or scenarios, each one of them judged differently. Each one of them is going to be, weighed on the value of, number one, for instance, when you are stopped by a police officer, okay? When you are stopped by a police officer, and this is in New York State, I can't speak for other states, but in New York State, you are not legally responsible to carry an ID.
Oh, I don't know that.
You have to have your license. If driving, you have to have your license, you have to have your registration, and you have to have your insurance if you are pulled over.
If you're the driver.
If you're the driver,
if
yes.
You're just in the car, you're saying?
Because the driver is the only one responsible for the vehicle itself and everything in it. Okay? You with me?
I'm with you.
So if I'm walking down the street and a police officer walks up to me, okay, this is where most of the Fourth Amendment gets challenged, okay? Particularly in Black communities or communities of minorities.
Or impoverished. Let's just say impoverished communities.
Okay. Impoverished communities. Less affluent, however you want to describe it. But what happens is the cop comes up to the individual is told to stop. At that moment, it is your responsibility to stop. It is not your responsibility to answer any questions. Okay? It is not your responsibility. Now they do with prudence say to you, you should cooperate. Okay? That you should cooperate. Now, I believe, yes, you should cooperate. Here's where it gets tricky. They have a right based off of, and it is called, listen to this, it is called reasonable suspicion.
Yep, I've seen it.
Reasonable suspicion is not probable cause. It's under probable cause, but greater than a hunch.
He has a hoodie on. He has long hair.
Yep. But just because you fit the description, the officer has to articulate they think you're committing a crime, have committed a crime, or about to commit a crime. You with me?
I'm with you. So
the reasonable suspicion, if it's met, they have a right to stop you. Ask, you can't be, you cannot be detained. So you have the right to say, "Am I being detained?" And the officer may say, "Well, I just want to ask you some questions." The question is, you have to answer, "Am I being detained?" If they say no, you have a right to walk away.